Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Real English Practice. We are so glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We have a really fantastic one for you today.
We really do. And before we jump into the content, just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out.
Exactly. And make sure to like and share this video if you find it helpful. It really, really helps us out.
It totally does. So today, our mission is to help you improve your English speaking journey. And we're looking at this amazing transcript from a YouTube video by a teacher named Sarah.
Right, from her channel, EnglishSpeaking.way.
Yeah, and the video is called Day 1, Speak English with Me, 5-Day Shadowing Challenge. And, you know, it's funny how we trick ourselves into thinking we're learning when we're actually just, well, observing.
Oh, absolutely. It's the trap of passive learning.
Right. It's like watching a high-end cooking show.
Yeah.
You sit on your couch and you watch the chef effortlessly dice the onions, sear the steak, and perfectly deglaze the pan.
Yeah, and you understand every single step of the process.
Exactly. You know exactly why they added the butter at the very end. But then you walk into your own kitchen, someone hands you a professional chef's knife, and suddenly your hands have absolutely no idea what to do.
It's like the knowledge is perfectly stored in your head, but it is completely disconnected from your physical muscles.
Yes, the knowledge is just sitting there. And that gap between theory and execution is where so many people get permanently stuck, especially when it comes to acquiring a complex new skill like a language.
We routinely confuse passive consumption with active acquisition. I mean, we think understanding equals being able to do it.
Which brings us back to Sarah's challenge. Now, on the surface, you hear that title, a 5-day challenge, and you probably picture a standard rote memorization vocabulary drill, right?
Yeah, like a teacher pointing at a whiteboard.
Right. But looking closely at how she structures this, the primary focus isn't on grammar rules or verb conjugations at all.
Not at all. It is entirely about psychology. It's about building confidence and the actual physical muscular act of using your voice.
Because passive learning, like simply watching educational videos or listening to language podcasts on your commute, might actually be the central roadblock keeping you from your goals.
That's a scary thought, right?
Yeah.
That the studying you think you're doing is actually holding you back.
It really is. So today we're looking at how just 5 minutes a day of a highly specific kind of practice can physically rewire that disconnect between your brain and your mouth.
5 minutes sounds almost too trivial to matter, honestly.
It does. But Sarah kicks off her challenge with this foundational philosophy that attacks how most adult learners approach a new task. She tells her audience flat out, fluency is not a race, it's a habit.
Which runs completely counter to the cramming culture we're so used to.
Oh, totally. We tend to view learning a language as this massive mountain we have to sprint up before we lose motivation.
Right, like we download a flashcard app,
Yeah.
try to memorize 500 words over a weekend, and inevitably just burn out completely.
Exactly. But Sarah breaks down the math entirely differently. She argues that 5 minutes of daily practice is vastly more powerful than 1 hour of practice once a week.
Yeah, and from a cognitive standpoint, there is a huge reason why the brain prefers the 5-minute daily trip over the intense weekend cram session.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why is that?
Well, it comes down to how our brains build and consolidate neural pathways. When you cram for an hour on a Sunday, you're relying heavily on your short-term working memory.
So you're basically just stuffing information in for a test.
Exactly. You are flooding the system, but your brain doesn't get the repeated, consistent signal that this information is essential for long-term survival. But when you practice for just 5 minutes every single day, you are utilizing spaced repetition. You're constantly pinging that neural pathway, signaling to your brain, hey, we need to keep this bridge open and strengthen it.
Because it's a daily occurrence.
Right. That daily low-stakes ping is what creates momentum. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that momentum is what actually builds real confidence.
Which makes perfect sense. She actually uses an analogy that really clarifies this. She tells her learners to think of her videos like an English-speaking gym.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. If you go to a physical gym and just sit on a bench watching someone else lift weights, your muscles aren't going to grow.
You're just spectating.
Exactly. You could probably critique someone else's bicep curl form perfectly because you understand the mechanics, but you aren't providing any physical stimulus to your own body.
And that physical stimulus is just non-negotiable for growth. I mean, it's also why she explicitly tells listeners before they even begin the exercises, Please do not compare yourself to anyone.
Which is so hard to do, honestly.
It's incredibly hard. We are socially wired to constantly measure our progress against others. But doing that spikes your cortisol, and that actually impedes the learning process.
So stress literally stops you from learning.
Yes. By normalizing the idea that every learner has a different timeline. Some pick it up fast, some need more time to warm up. She's lowering what linguists call the affective filter.
The affective filter.
Yeah, it's basically the emotional barrier of anxiety that prevents linguistic input from actually reaching the language acquisition part of your brain.
Wow. So if you're stressed, the language literally bounces off a wall in your brain.
Pretty much, yeah.
That is fascinating. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics she uses for this daily workout. It revolves around a technique called shadowing.
Right, shadowing.
And the instructions are rigid and very specific. The learner has to look at the subtitles on the screen, listen carefully to the rhythm of her voice. She even uses highlighted words on the screen to guide the pacing, and then repeat the sentences out loud 3 times.
And the key part there is out loud.
Yes. She insists repeatedly that learners must speak out loud, not in their head. Out loud. But I have to push back on this a bit because I think about the reality of a learner's environment.
Sure, yeah.
If I'm sitting in my apartment, right, and my roommates are in the next room, it feels incredibly awkward to talk to a computer screen alone.
Oh, it feels ridiculous.
So what does this all mean for the learner sitting alone in their kitchen? Why can't I just quietly mouth the words? If I'm physically moving my lips and thinking the sounds, isn't that enough to build the muscle memory without feeling foolish?
Well, it's a highly logical question. And it's the exact reason most learners fall into what Sarah astutely calls the silent learner trap.
The silent learner trap. I like that.
Right. Mouthing the words feels much safer. It avoids all that social awkwardness you mentioned, but it completely bypasses the complex motor function required for actual speech.
Because you aren't really using your voice.
Exactly. When you just mouth words or think them, you're primarily engaging Wernicke's area in the brain, which is responsible for language comprehension.
Okay.
So you feel a rush of dopamine because you understand the concept perfectly.
It's the illusion of competence. You feel like you did the work.
Yes, but you aren't actually practicing production. You're not activating Broca's area, which handles speech production, nor are you engaging the motor cortex in any meaningful way.
Because you aren't making any sound.
Right. Speaking any language requires the highly coordinated physical movement of your diaphragm, your vocal folds, your tongue, your lips, and your jaw.
It's a whole physical system.
It is a deeply physical, muscular act. When you silently mouth a word, you aren't pushing air from your diaphragm or vibrating your vocal cords to hit the specific frequencies and rhythms of English phonetics.
So mouthing the words is kind of like mimicking a golf swing without actually holding a club.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
You aren't feeling the weight of the club or the resistance of the air, so when you finally step up to a real ball, your body panics because it doesn't actually know what the real movement feels like.
Exactly. You simply cannot develop the necessary physical muscle memory silently. The 3-time repetition structure she implements is designed specifically for this physical calibration.
How so?
Well, the first attempt out loud is usually clumsy. Right. Your mouth is searching for the unfamiliar shape.
Yeah, it always feels a bit clunky at first.
Then the second attempt allows your brain to subtly correct the awkwardness. And finally, the third attempt solidifies that neuromotor connection. You have to endure the awkwardness of making the sounds alone in your kitchen, or you will absolutely freeze up when you try to produce them in the high-stakes environment of a real-world conversation.
Wow, that makes so much sense. But the physical mechanics of speech only tell half the story here.
Very true.
Because what truly elevates this from a standard pronunciation drill to something much deeper is the actual content of what
Dissonance.
So it's less about accountability to the teacher and more about holding yourself accountable to the new identity you're trying to build.
Precise.
You are shifting away from the identity of someone who simply wants to learn English and adopting the identity of someone who practices English daily. You're proving to yourself that you are someone who shows up.
An identity shift is exactly what's happening. And, you need that foundational identity in place for what comes next.
Because this is just day one.
Right. At the end of the transcript, she teases that day 2 will focus on how to think in English.
Oh, wow. The holy grail of language learning.
Yes. The ability to bypass that exhausting internal translation process and just exist in the language.
But you can't jump straight to thinking in English on day 1.
Not at all.
The deliberate sequencing of this challenge is what makes it so effective. She doesn't start with the mind. She starts with the physical, muscular confidence of making the sounds.
You have to break through the physical hesitation first.
The body leads and the mind follows. If your vocal cords and diaphragm are still terrified of producing the sounds, your brain is never going to comfortably start thinking in those sounds.
Those small 5-minute daily efforts of physical vocalization, they seem almost insignificant in the moment, but they are the engine of momentum.
Yeah.
And that momentum is what ultimately builds the confidence to execute, moving you from a passive observer to an active participant.
The body leads and the mind follows. I love that. And whether you're trying to learn a new language, picking up an instrument for the first time, or, trying to master a complex new software for your career, you cannot just be a professional observer.
You have to get in the game.
Real progress doesn't come from endlessly consuming content or understanding the theory perfectly in your head while sitting on the couch. It comes from the willingness to be a beginner.
To make those physical mistakes out loud.
Exactly. And to endure the awkwardness of building that real-world muscle memory. So, before we wrap up today, please tell us your opinion in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this method.
Yeah, definitely let us know.
And it leaves you with something pretty compelling to consider today. If 5 minutes of deliberately speaking out loud to an empty room can physically rewire the brain to break down the monumental barrier of learning a new language, what other deep-seated fears, doubts, or mental blocks in your own life could you start to dismantle just by giving your intentions a physical voice for 5 minutes a day?
That's a great question.
What happens when you stop watching the chef and finally pick up the knife? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. You can absolutely do this. Keep practicing, and we will see you next time on Real English Practice.